Hey, this is Mr. Mitchell again with another video, this one on social studies. Nationalism to World War I. During the late 1800s and 1900s, people across the world had the desire to govern themselves, and you can understand why. You have, for years, imperialism which ruled the world, and you had Europe which controlled countries from almost all corners of our earth. And you can imagine that at some point these people would have a real desire to govern themselves, probably from the beginning, but in the early 1900s especially, places were able to break free from their imperialistic bonds. This nationalism, which is a strong pride in a nation or ethnic group, even influenced Europe. So let's put nationalism as a strong pride in nation. And for those countries that had not yet gotten free, it was a strong pride in their ethnic group. For centuries, kings and queens had ruled these European nations, but more and more nations had citizens demanding to elect lawmakers who could limit the king's power. Now, this kind of government is called a constitutional monarchy. In a constitutional monarchy, you have both a ruling body that is elected by people, but you still have a king or queen called the monarchy. And you actually still have that in a few places today, places like Great Britain here. Great Britain here has a queen, has princes. The king has died, but the queen was his wife. But the king and queen and princes have almost no say-so in what the laws are. The ruling body that is elected in part by the people is the one that has the say-so in what the laws are. By 1900, Europe had many constitutional monarchies like the one that's today in Europe and in Great Britain. Now, this rise in nationalism created a dangerous trend in Europe. And the dangerous trend had to do with alliances. Alliances, of course, are friendships amongst countries, but in the early 1900s, it was for defense purposes. Let's take a look at the alliances that had formed. You had France, which was in an alliance with the United Kingdom or Britain, and they also had Russia that was in this alliance. Now you can, looking at the map here, you can see what's happening here. You have these countries who are in Central Europe that may have felt a little squeezed in by this alliance. If any country were to attack Russia or France or Britain, the others would come to their defense. So if one of these countries did decide to take over another, they would have to defend from both sides. So we ended up having another alliance, an alliance amongst these larger countries in Central Europe. Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy were in an alliance together. And you can see how this started to shape up, because they did not want to feel fenced in, and if they had attacks from any of these countries, they would defend each other. Turns out, in retrospect, a lot of historians think that might not have been a good idea, because here's what really happened to get World War I started. Many people blame these alliances because there was a conflict that had to do between Austria-Hungary and Serbia. The Archduke of Austria-Hungary was called Franz Ferdinand, and Franz Ferdinand was assassinated on his wedding day by somebody from Serbia. Serbs apparently didn't get along well with the Austrians. But Serbia is not one of these big countries here that had the alliance openly. But it did turn out that Serbia had a secret alliance with Russia. And that alliance is probably what started World War I. Because once Serbia attacked Austria-Hungary, or at least once the Serbian killed Franz Ferdinand, it seemed like the alliances started kicking in, you might say. It had been a long time since there was a war, a big war in Europe, and it seemed like there was a childish delusion about war. The sentiment at the time was that the war would be glorious, but brief. Germany attacked France, and Germany attacked France by going through Belgium. Up here in northern France is where they got to. They were stopped just north of Paris, and 300 miles of trenches were built in northern France. Trenches by Germany facing toward Paris, trenches by France facing toward Germany. And for 4 years there was little ground gained in northern France. This was called the Western Front. The Western Front was where the trenches were in World War I in northern France. And both sides had many, many casualties. So what did happen with Austria-Hungary and Serbia? Well, Austria-Hungary invaded Serbia before Russia could get there to defend it, and 1/6 of all Serbians died because of the invasion. So Austria-Hungary got what it wanted in an attack on Serbia, but sure enough, these countries that were not involved in the original conflict came to be a part of it because of all the alliances. Then Germany attacked Russia. Do you think Germany would have much success against Russia? They sure did. They had a lot of success against Russia. But that was also about the time of the Russian Revolution. You may remember we had talked a little bit about Nicholas and the Revolution, how he was overthrown, and it was during World War I when that happened. And Russia, once the revolution did start, dropped out of the war. Now, the United States would enter this war, but the United States would enter this war very late in it, and it had was able to help in some of the sea battles. A peace was negotiated in 1918. World War I ended in 1918. And it turned out to be what was called at the time the War to End All Wars, because it didn't kill 22 or 22,000 people. It killed 22 million people. Europeans called it the War to End All Wars. It was known for its trenches, for its machine guns, for its poison gas, and the area between the trenches was called no man's land. Have some questions. Have some questions here about nationalism to World War I. Here are the questions. What is the term for pride in one's country or ethnic group? Number 2. What is the term for a government with ruling bodies and kings and queens? Excuse me. Number 3. These 3 countries were allies before World War I. France, Britain, and what other country? Number 4. Which countries were allies before World War I? Italy, Austria, and what other country? Austrian Franz Ferdinand was killed by someone from what country? And the Western Front, in which almost all of World War I was fought, was in what country? Well, I hope you've learned a little bit about nationalism to World War I.